Oh man, what a company. If only they could aid me in my quest to play shitty video games. This is a funny little story about companies that don't make video games that think they can make fucking video games. Fun fact, 99% of the time, they can't. Most recent example of that is easily Google with Stadia. I mean, this was hard to be skeptical about at first because, like, hey, if there's any company that can get into the video game medium, it's probably Google. I mean, this is an expensive ass industry to get into, primarily if you're putting out consoles. And Google has a lot of money and they were willing to just blow it all on this junk. It was quoted that they paid like an absurd amount to get Red Dead Redemption 2 ported to Google Stadia, which like, I don't even know how much the porting process on like a streaming platform is, but it ain't that much. I don't think Stadia was like a complete catastrophe when it came to the technical side of things. It was just like, as a game platform, why the hell would you use this thing? It was oftentimes more expensive, there wasn't a great selection. The selection that was there, I mean like, yeah, you could play quality games, but there were games that you could get for like $5 on Xbox at that point. Like they had Ubisoft on board for Stadia. If anything, that should scare people away. Well, that's pretty much all there was on Stadia. It was like a bunch of Ubisoft games and like a straggler here and there, like, oh, Red Dead, and, you know, hey, Cyberpunk was on there, Cyberpunk 2077, and yeah, Stadia was probably the most stable way to play Cyberpunk 2077 if you didn't have, like, this insanely great PC at the time. I wouldn't say there was, like, a bunch of negatives with Google Stadia, there was just more reasons just not to use it. Cloud gaming just ain't there. I mean, it's cool, it's a great option to have, but I don't think it's ever going to be, like, the primary way we play games, like these companies are expecting it to be. And thus, Google Stadia just shut down. Google just gave up with it. They refunded everybody who ever spent any money on Google Stadia. They patched the controller so then you could just use it outside of Google Stadia just as a standard Bluetooth controller. That was nice of them. And yeah, they pretty much just wiped their hands clean of this whole deal, which was shocking, but not shocking at the same time because like around the time Google Stadia was announced, everybody was skeptical, like, how long is this gonna last? This is a service contingent on Google keeping it up and running, and Google is very well known for shutting down pretty much every new project they announce. But yeah, this was just an example of like a mega company thinking they could do anything without any knowledge on how any of it works. It's like when you see a celebrity that tries to start a music career and a fashion line and get into movies and TV shows and YouTube and Twitch streaming, all this nonsense. It's just like, you can't do it all. Which reminds me, does anybody remember the Facebook phone? It's called like the HTC First, and I remember like a big build up to that thing, like, oh my god, Facebook is releasing a phone! It was like Facebook was like the biggest thing at the time. I mean, it still is the biggest thing, but you know, hey, I'm in my mid-20s, I don't use Facebook. The only time I go on Facebook is like once a month, and it's to see who's on my feed, because then I can go like, oh wow, who got left behind on Facebook? But back in like 2011 or something, it was like, oh man, of course Facebook is gonna make a phone. And it was like the cheapest, lamest ass thing ever. Like, why do you need a Facebook-centered phone? It's like when Amazon made their own phone. Speaking of which, yes, the Amazon Fire products. I was talking about the Amazon Fire phone, but here we have the Amazon Fire TV products, which they've had a fair amount throughout the years. And I gotta be completely honest, I never really liked these things. The whole Fire TV interface never appealed to me. It always just felt really laggy, really jittery. I mean, Amazon Prime Video as it is already kind of a nuisance to scroll through. I don't know why. It's like the Amazon Prime app on any like streaming box or even the website. It's always like the laggiest, slowest one of the bunch. Like Netflix is fine, Hulu's okay, Paramount Plus is there, and then you have Amazon Prime Video, which at least in recent years I think Amazon's kind of given up on like being a legitimate competitor to like Netflix and Hulu. I really don't see a ton of like syndicated shows pop up on Amazon like they used to. It's pretty much now originals, and Amazon Prime does have some good original shows, but you're just not getting the same like recognizable names and recognizable shows that you love watching in reruns that you do on Netflix and Hulu and all the other streaming services. You can pay for them by like the season or the episode on Amazon Prime like you can on like Apple TV or something. So I think that's what Amazon Prime is best at, and honestly, like anything included in Amazon Prime, I think it's just kind of a bonus. I'm not subscribed to Amazon Prime because of the streaming functionalities or anything like that. But either way, this is all for me to convey that I don't care about Amazon's TV functionality. I'm a Roku boy. I have like an LG CX TV that was like an expensive, nice TV. I mean, like this thing has amazing picture quality. But then I go to the user interface and it's peanuts. I hate that thing. I mean, like, I've gotten used to it. It's fine. I can tolerate it. But compared to my Roku TVs, which I use everywhere else, they're just so much nicer. Yes, they're simple. Yes, they're cheaper. The picture quality on my Roku TVs pale in comparison to the LG CX. However, they're not bad. I can always tolerate the Roku TV picture quality. It's kind of just bad by comparison. If I go and watch something on the LG CX and then I go watch something on my Roku TV in the game room, I'm like, yeah, I can tell, like, that is an OLED. But the Roku TV still looks nice, and the interface actually fucking works. It's smooth, it's quick, it's simple. I can just get into everything immediately. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the perfect smart TV. I love it. I love it to death. And the fact that it's all built into the TV is just incredible. Because that's the thing. These ones are set-top boxes or sticks right here. You plug it in and then you get access to all these streaming channels. And I used to rock an Apple TV, the second gen, back in like 2010, 2011. And that was like a huge leap forward for me. I loved the fact that I could AirPlay stuff to it from my iPhone or iPod Touch or what have you, accessing all of my iTunes library and accessing the streaming channels. The Apple TV back during the second generation was weird because you couldn't download apps to it. They would just like update the firmware and add apps to it. Like everybody had the same app layout on Apple TV. Eventually those streaming boxes evolved. Apple TV took a while to evolve to kind of catch up with what Amazon was doing with the Fire TV boxes and the Roku boxes and all of that. But yeah, around the 2014, 2015 range is when all of these companies had their streaming boxes where you could download all these different apps or even video games, which is what we're here to talk about today. I'm sorry it took so long, but hey, you know, you get me started talking about TV streaming boxes, I'm not gonna leave. Whether we're talking Apple TV, Roku, or Fire TV, they all have video games on them, but for the most part, they are kind of primarily just like simple mobile type games. Like you can play Pac-Man on these, just Tetris, like just simple stuff like that. But it was around like 2014, 2015, 2016 that a lot of these companies really tried to like get into the video game sphere a bit more. Mobile games were big, and these streaming boxes were primarily based on like smartphone tech, or at least the Apple TV side of things was. So you kind of think, okay, so mobile games are stupidly popular, and then we sell this super cheap $100 box to just plug into your TV for Netflix and the sort. Damn, we can sell this as a cheap video game console as well. Apple tried to do that, and they still do it to an extent. You know, many of the games on their Apple Arcade subscription service are playable on Apple TV as well. You can hook up most Bluetooth controllers to the Apple TV and play games via that method. But Apple never really went like all in with it. Amazon though? Oh boy. This right here is the Fire TV Gaming Edition, which, hey, this one here is kind of like the second edition of this whole Fire TV Gaming Edition thing. Because I remember when Amazon announced like the first edition of this one released here in 2015. I believe back in April of 2014, Amazon announced like this Fire TV set-top box and a game controller to go along with it. And they pushed this as like, hey, like, throw away your Xbox, and what did they do that with? They showed like footage of this Gears of War ripoff mobile game. I remember watching reviews of this thing at the time and people were like, yeah, it looks okay, you know, it plays all right. It's just like, come on, guys. It's like when that mobile Call of Duty ripoff game series, Modern Combat, came to the Nintendo Switch and people were like, okay, you know, I mean, like, here's your Call of Duty game, everybody. It's just, no. I'm sorry, but ripoffs like that, they're never really gonna, like, convert anybody. Like, you can't be playing your Xbox with Gears of War and then look at this fucking thing on Fire TV and be like, oh, well, you know, the Fire TV is cheaper, so, you know, I can sell my Xbox and just get this instead. But this right here is something they released a year later in 2015, the Fire TV Gaming Edition. You get the set-top box, a game controller, a 32 gigabyte micro SD card, so it's not even on the system. It's just, you just get an SD card, and 2 games included for free, which one of them I can see is Shovel Knight, which is pretty insane. Shovel Knight released in 2014 on the Wii U, 3DS, and PC, and then just a year later, it's on this set-top box. That is pretty impressive, especially considering, like, this is an actual game. Because all the other games that they're showing on here, it's like Pac-Man 256. That's a really cool game, but it's also, like, it's a mobile game. You have Crossy Road, the Game of Thrones Telltale Game Series game, Ollie Ollie, that was an indie game, Terraria. They have Tetris and a couple of the Jackbox games, which is interesting. Gamefly Streaming. I don't know what the other included game is. Even here they say, plus get 2 hit games, a $24.98 value, including award-winning Shovel Knight. You have all this space here. Just tell me what the second one is. It can't be anything that crazy. It must be like a $5 game or a $10 game, because Shovel Knight was around like the $15, $20 range. But what I'm really interested in here is if this still works today. This is a nearly 10-year-old device that is completely reliant on an internet connection. All right, let's see. Ooh, look at this fella, eh? Okay, here's what I don't like about Amazon stuff. So, Amazon sells a lot of their own stuff, like the Amazon Basics line. They always put their damn logo on everything. And I'm just like, stop it. I don't know. It just makes everything just look a lot cheaper, because whenever I see something with the Amazon logo, I think of Amazon Basics, which is like the cheapo version. A lot of them actually work very well. So it's like, I get a lot of Amazon Basics stuff, but that's where my mind goes. I immediately think like, oh, this is the cheap ass one. And also, like, what other store do you know that always puts their logo all over this stuff? Most of the stores have like a different brand name for that. Like, I know like Insignia is from Best Buy, Great Value is from Walmart. No, it's just everything just says Amazon. And I feel like that devalues Amazon things. But I gotta say, this controller, it's fine. I don't think it's anything to write home about, but it does work. There's nothing inherently like bad about it. It does give off that third-party controller for Xbox vibe though. It does have the full Xbox layout here. The D-pad feels a little strange. Like, again, it doesn't feel really bad. It's just, I'm not used to D-pads feeling this way. It's like weirdly a little stiff, but like it's not horrible. The buttons feel a little cheap, but again, they don't feel bad. They just kind of, they got that vibe to them. And then we have the battery compartment here with these fingerprint magnets on the back. Why? Doesn't look to be any like USB ports or anything like that. Oh my God. I'm really sorry, but this Arial ass text being the labels for the buttons, it just kind of spells it out right there. This just feels like a third-party controller that's just kind of, it's a little cheaper, but it does the job. All right, and then we have the Fire TV box itself here, and the old micro SD card. Well, at this point, I definitely need to just check this out. I mean, this was pretty much Amazon saying, like, we're making a game console, but, like, not putting any effort into it. At least that's the way it felt like when they first announced it. I mean, like, I think they never did a Fire TV before they initially announced this thing in 2014 alongside this game controller, and they kind of wanted to be like, hey, we're getting into the streaming box market, and we're doing video games as well. But all the video games were just like bad mobile games. But hey, for this second generation version, on the box, they did show more legitimate video games. Sure, a lot of them were more casual, stuff like Jackbox or Tetris and whatnot. But I'm still gonna check this out. I wanna see if it actually still works and what games are available on the Fire TV marketplace. Holy shit. Listen, guys, I wasn't expecting much from this. These micro console, TV, game console, whatever, set-top box hybrids, they are pretty much based off of mobile operating systems, and a lot of the apps that you can get on that, and specifically the video games, are very much based on what's available on mobile. So when this thing is like from 2015 or so, like, yeah, I didn't have much hope for it. But the Amazon Fire TV Gaming Edition exceeded my expectations and was worse than I could have ever imagined. So just as like a streaming box, I didn't really test it out like that. It already took forever to get this thing set up with my Amazon account. It kept on saying like, oh yeah, we're sending you a code to your phone. it wasn't. I had to Google around to figure out, like, hey, like, this is an obsolete device. It keeps telling me that it's sending me a code to my phone. So I had to go out of my way to turn on two-factor authentication on my Amazon account. And I'm like, I don't need two-factor authentication. This is all the two-factor authentication I need. He gets worried when I talk about this stuff. Regardless, after a little bit of finagling, I got this thing to work with my Amazon account, and I was into the Fire TV experience, and it made me remember I don't like the Fire TV experience. Definitely more of a Roku guy. You know, it's not the ads. You know, both of these user interfaces have advertisements baked into the experience, but I just find that Fire TV is just way more stuttery. And it's not just the fact that this is like a 2015 device. Like, whenever I've gone over to friends' houses with the Fire TV, I just noticed that, like, it's just way slower and just way more sluggish than the Roku TV. But that's just my uneducated opinion. That's just based on, like, what I've experienced. I don't actually know which is actually faster. But I gotta be honest, navigating the home screen was a nightmare. It was so damn difficult to just go and look up different games and whatnot. There was no, like, storefront. There was no, like, general apps page for, like, games. Now, of course, I think a lot of that was due to the fact that this device is pretty damn obsolete. Like, there was nothing really in the featured section for games because, like, what the hell were they featuring? There's nothing that works with this thing anymore. And that is the biggest problem with the Fire TV Gaming Edition. Barely any games exist that work on this thing anymore. Now, of course, that's to be expected, but at the same time, when you're marketing this as like a video game console with a controller that could withstand the most AAA modern gaming experience, I mean, we have analog triggers here, we have a full suite of buttons, sticks, a D-pad, everything. And then these are the games we're playing with it? It's just kind of silly. Now, I had some high hopes here. For one, I was looking forward to Shovel Knight. It was included for free on the Fire TV Gaming Edition. I love Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is one of the best 2D platformers, not only in recent years, but of all time, really. And the fact that Amazon made a deal with Yacht Club Games to get Shovel Knight on the Amazon Fire App Store, it's really cool. It's just so awesome that this is used as like, hey, this is the pack-in game for the Fire TV Gaming Edition, you know, because it makes so much sense. You know, hey, this is a legitimate video game. This is a gamer's game. It's not graphically intensive or anything, like it can work on a mobile device if you really want it to. But I think having Shovel Knight here really showed that Amazon was trying to push this as a legitimate video game console. If they included something like, I don't know, like Pac-Man 256 for free, you know, a free game, or whatever, stuff like Crossy Road and whatnot, you know, or like even like Minecraft Pocket Edition or something. It's like, yeah, these are all fine games, but these are all obviously mobile games. This right here, even though it is not very graphically intensive, like it's an actual like video game that isn't just a mobile game brought over to the Fire TV. I wasn't necessarily interested in how it ran or how it looked. I automatically assumed like it was going to be Shovel Knight. More so on the fact that like, hey, Shovel Knight's here. That's awesome. Shovel Knight was not there. I looked everywhere in the Fire TV box. I saw absolutely no download code. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe if I activate the Fire TV, it'll just add Shovel Knight to my library. No! I looked up Shovel Knight on the App Store here, and it does pop up as Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. So a few years after Shovel Knight launched, Yacht Club Games kind of adjusted the way Shovel Knight was offered. Back when they were crowdfunding the game, they reached a bunch of stretch goals where they promised, oh, a couple different campaigns with different playable characters. And then they went fucking crazy, and they pretty much ended up making like actually like 5 separate games. And if you already bought Shovel Knight, it was all just free updates. But for anybody that was buying Shovel Knight, you know, as a brand new release, you know, yeah, they had to increase the price because, you know, they spent like, what, like 5 years or something developing free updates for Shovel Knight. They were like, oh, we have to increase the price of Shovel Knight overall, and we'll also make it so then you can buy each of the campaigns separately if you want. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe that's why Shovel Knight wasn't appearing for free on my Amazon Fire TV. I doubt it. I just don't think it works anymore. I don't think this offer is still valid. I could have still downloaded Shovel Knight to the Fire TV Gaming Edition, Would have cost $40, and I already know that it's Shovel Knight. It'll run fine, but also with a device like this, you do run the risk that I would purchase it and download it, and I would just receive like constant error messages, like it just won't boot up or something, which is a problem I ran into numerous times with this thing. I mean, like the crappiest looking games, like just I'd open them up, they wouldn't really work. There was an Asphalt game, you know, Asphalt, kind of like that premier mobile game racing series that like nobody's fucking passionate about whatsoever, but it just keeps on making money because people with phones have very little else to play when it comes to decent enough racing games. So that would download, and then it would boot up, and then it would tell me, oh, hey, you need more space, so then we can download more data. I'm like, fair enough. Lucky for me and lucky for them, the Fire TV came with a 32 gigabyte micro SD card. So I popped that in, and I rebooted up Asphalt, and it still didn't work. Didn't matter if I had the SD card in, didn't matter if I deleted extra things, it still kept saying you don't have enough storage. Okay. So I kept looking around in the Amazon Fire Games marketplace, trying to find anything that, you know, looked like somewhat like legitimate, and a couple of games still worked, specifically Pac-Man 256 and Crossy Road. They're made by the same developers, so, you know, hey, it's cool that those are still working on this ancient-ass device. And yeah, they work just fine. You know, they do feel a little stuttery. I don't know how much of kind of like the feeling of lag and input delay is based on this controller being kind of crappy, or just the fact that like this is a device from 2015. Because yeah, it didn't feel very tactile. It didn't feel very instant if I would move around, especially for games like those. You know, you kind of want to be able to move very quickly. I didn't really feel like I had very precise control with this controller, but I'm not gonna fault it too much. I will fault it for other reasons. It just feels like a basic fucking third-party controller, I gotta be honest. It functions, but like the buttons feel a little cheapy, plasticky, but they'll make do, you know? Like, this is the most 6 out of 10 controller I've ever held. But I still wanted to put it through its paces, so I tried out a game that was really going to use this controller in all of its glory. Jesus fucking. Okay, Flappy Bird is back. So, I remember when Flappy Bird hit it big. This was when I was like in my sophomore year of high school. Back then, you know, everybody kind of was getting a smartphone around that time. So, everybody was kind of, you know, talking about, you know, what that week's mobile game is, pretty much. And of course, Flappy Bird hit it big for a bit there. I think most people know about this because Flappy Bird was all over the news. And gaming websites reported on it a lot because, like, they blatantly just took, like, the Mario pipes and put it in the game. And for the kids in high school, like myself, it was just kind of like the latest craze of, like, oh my god, this game is balls hard. What score did you get? Oh, I got this much. I got this much. Oh, I'm not very good. You know, it's very surface level conversation piece of like, oh my god, this is the latest craze. Now, when I say that, nobody was actually like that into it. It was kind of just like, yeah, this is the mobile game people are dicking around with right now. But there was this whole controversy where the developer of the game definitely just made that game to mess around. He was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw this on the App Store. Who cares? And then it blew up, and I think he definitely just couldn't handle the amount of people playing the game and the amount of people saying they were addicted to it and everything. So he opted to take the game down, which I respect the hell out of. You know, it shows that this guy was just kind of doing this because he just wanted to kind of make some games. Who cares? You know, just kind of for the hell of it. But then, you know, like he took it down. You know, he could have had so much success. He could have milked the hell out of Flappy Bird. But instead, he said, like, no, like, I'm not feeling very comfortable with people getting this addicted to my game. So I'm like, good for him. I also just kind of want to know, where the hell did this version come from? A little bit later, Flappy Bird's Family released on Amazon devices. And ever since, this has been the only place you could get, like, the Flappy Bird experience. It's just weird. It's just weird that, like, yeah, Flappy Bird is still available, technically, but only on Amazon devices, and it still works on the Fire TV Gaming Edition. The main thing added to this one is multiplayer. You can play multiplayer here. I didn't test it out, but I tested out regular Flappy Bird. it's Flappy Bird. They have Tetris available on here. I played the free trial of it, and yeah, it's Tetris. There's really not much going on there. It's like a mobile version of Tetris that's withstood the test of time. Like, you know, a lot of mobile versions of Tetris. I remember the OG, like, 2010 iPhone, iPad version of Tetris. I remember that one, and that has long since been discontinued. And there's been other versions of Tetris for mobile throughout the years, but most of the time they always end up getting discontinued, and the version of Tetris that's available for mobile now is probably super iPhone mobilized bullshit. It's like, oh, if you try to download Pac-Man on the iPhone these days, like the version that you download is like this really weird version with like levels that's like it's trying to turn Pac-Man into a full-blown mobile game instead of just giving you the original arcade game, which is what that app was always before that point. But yeah, the version that's still on Fire TV, it's Tetris. There was this one game that used the Temple Run icon that wasn't Temple Run, and I tried to open it up, and it just gave me a bunch of garbage. What else? Well, there was Final Fantasy III, the mobile version of Final Fantasy III, which was based on the DS remake of the game. Yeah, that was on the store. Of course, a lot of these are like a little too expensive for me to really warrant pulling the trigger on, especially when I don't even know if these would work anymore. They'll definitely let me purchase it. They might let me download it, but at some point, something's gonna crash and it's not gonna let me play anything. Much like the Amazon Luna app. So Amazon Luna is their cloud gaming service, which definitely took over any of this Fire TV Gaming Edition nonsense. Like, that is what Amazon wants to do when it comes to legitimate video games. They don't want to do this stuff anymore where they're trying to pass off mobile games on a Fire TV box as an actual gaming experience. They've opted to invest in cloud gaming, which I think is probably a better move. I don't think it's gonna blow up or anything, but I think it's better than trying to pass off mobile games as like, oh yeah, you need this great controller for these games. And it's like, bro, what are you talking about? The only game that you have here is like Sonic the Hedgehog 4 on mobile devices on my TV. Like, what do you want me to do with this? That's what a lot of this ended up feeling like. It's just like, oh my god, you like video games? Well, here's a video game device. And it's just like, come on, bro. Like, I know what you're doing. These are mobile games. If I like mobile games, I already have a mobile phone. Like, just, that's how it is. And if I love traditional video game experiences, I have a much better video game console alternative than whatever this thing was. But hey, cloud gaming is pretty much just dependent on your internet connection. You can run that thing on like a fucking tomato. I know the saying is usually you can run that on a potato, but that should show you can run cloud gaming apps on literally anything, even stuff that's not potatoes. And yeah, when I looked up the Luna Cloud Gaming app on this device, it showed up. It didn't let me download it. Kept running into errors saying I already own the app because back when I did the cloud gaming episode of Scout the Woz, I had a Fire TV stick that I used to download the Luna app and test things out. But because it was already in like my Amazon account's library, it was running into problems on here. It was just saying like hey, you already own this game. I'm like, I know I already own it in my library, but just let me download it again. Alas, it never did. I looked throughout the rest of the app library. Pretty much everything I talked about playing is the cream of the crop of what's still available on this. I thought potentially that, hey, maybe it's just because of the age of this thing. So I decided to go on Amazon.com and I went through the filters. You know, I clicked on, hey, like I want your Amazon App Store, and then, hey, give me Fire TV apps. And then I clicked on games after that. No, actually, there's jack shit available on these things right now. It's just like the epitome of shovelware, just absolutely nothing, just mobile games that are repurposed as TV apps. And even then, they're not good mobile games. Half of these are just scams. And like games you'd expect to work on the Fire TV just really don't. I couldn't find genuinely like anything worth playing on a Fire TV device. I think that just shows Amazon completely pivoted. They just don't give a damn. They're like, hey, we're not doing this thing anymore. Just do Amazon Luna now. Which I definitely understand. Like I said, this whole era of the micro console really was just like a giant misstep. Like, it just doesn't work, man. It just felt like these companies were trying to pull a fast one. You know, hey, we're already doing well with tablets and smartphones, so let's just take the video games on those devices because those do so well, and let's offer them on these TV boxes. Let's just throw an Xbox 360-like controller in there, and presto, we'll appeal to gamers. No! This feels like people wouldn't know any better, you know? Like, it's like, none of these games are very appealing to people outside of those who just have an iPhone and they're just waiting on the bus. So it's just like, yeah, screw it. Let me play Minecraft Pocket Edition. Then you put Minecraft Pocket Edition on your TV. It's not very appealing anymore, man. And these devices weren't that much cheaper than standard video game consoles. I believe the Fire TV Gaming Edition was roughly around like $200 or so. And in 2015, like, you could roughly get maybe like a PS4 or something for around $200 in 2015, 2016. Or oh, get one used or get a previous generation console. And hey, with those, you can still access Netflix and Amazon Instant Video and Hulu and all of this stuff. So trying to pass these off as legitimate alternatives to game consoles never worked. Especially when, just nearly a decade later, this thing is a genuine paperweight when it comes to video games. You're still able to kind of use it for streaming, that's fine, but like, no, there's no games to play on this anymore. But even then, back in the day, there still wasn't really games to play on it. I think it just shows, man, I don't trust these kind of companies when it comes to video games. I mean, hell, I don't even trust video game companies when it comes to video games anymore. But I think it just goes to show Amazon, Google, these companies don't understand video games. They think they do. They think they can do whatever the hell they want. They have so much money to blow that they're like, yeah, f it. Let's try video games. And then when video games don't work out, they're like, ah, yeah, f it. Let's just go back to what we know how to do. It's just an endless cycle, man. And sometimes, like, hey, some legitimately decent things can pop up. Amazon Luna ain't half bad from what I've experienced. There's a decent selection of games, and the streaming technology works pretty well. It outlived Google Stadia, that's at least something. But I was always fascinated by this era for Amazon. This I've never heard anybody talk about for years, how they tried to get into games with the Fire TV box, and it obviously didn't super work out. I mean, they stuck with video games, you know, they're kind of doing similar things these days, but now with cloud instead. But this little experiment of theirs is always a reminder to me. Don't trust Amazon when it comes to video game devices that say they include Shovel Knight for free, and they don't actually include Shovel Knight for free 10 years later, and they also say they include a second game that you have no fucking idea what it is. Yeah, they're bastards. Don't trust them.